I never thought Christmas Eve would be the day my entire life shattered and rebuilt itself in a way I could have never imagined. And I certainly never expected to walk down the aisle surrounded by twinkling lights, pine wreaths, and the soft glow of candle lanterns, only to discover a truth about my family that had been buried for decades. But before I tell you what happened at the altar, before I tell you who walked in during my vows, why my mother nearly fainted, and why my groom froze like he'd seen a ghost, I need to take you back to where it all started. My name is Evelyn Carter, and Christmas has always been complicated. Most people think of Christmas as warmth, laughter, presents, childhood magic. But for me, Christmas was rules. Christmas was pressure. Christmas was my mother's voice echoing through every hallway of our house. Everything must look perfect, Evelyn. Christmas is about family reputation. But somehow, despite those walls feeling tight around me, I still believed in love. I believed that if I could just create my own family, one built on trust instead of secrets, I'd finally have the Christmas I'd always dreamed of. And that dream seemed to come true when I met Daniel, the man I was ready to marry. But dreams, well, they're fragile. Especially when your past isn't what you think it is. Before we dive deeper, let me ask you something. Sparkles, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? I love seeing our little community coming together from every corner of the globe. And if you enjoy emotional, dramatic wedding stories where secrets explode at the worst possible moment, make sure you stick around to the end, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories just like this one. Now, let me take you to the beginning. To the Christmas Eves that shaped me. The traditions, the tension, the moments that felt normal at the time, but should have been warning signs. Because only now do I understand that the truth was always there, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the perfect moment. My wedding day, to finally reveal itself. If you had walked into my childhood home on Christmas Eve, you would have sworn it belonged in a glossy holiday magazine spread. Perfect garlands, perfect music, perfect smiles. But perfect things break the loudest. Every year, my mother would begin decorating at sunrise, moving through the house like a general preparing for war. She'd hang ornaments with surgical precision and instruct my father exactly where to place each piece of pine, each bough, each crystal snowflake. Presentation matters, Evelyn, she'd always say, her manicured fingers adjusting my hair even if it wasn't out of place. People judge families based on what they see. And we are not the kind of family who gives others reasons to talk. Except, they were that kind of family. Just not in ways you could see. I grew up learning two truths. Truth number 1, Christmas was the most important day of the year. Truth number 2, I was never allowed to ask why. Even as a child, I could sense tension in the air every December. It was in the way my mother triple-checked guest lists. The way my father disappeared into his study for long stretches of time. The way their voices went quiet when I walked into a room. And then there was the photo. A single framed picture we weren't allowed to touch. It sat on the mantel every Christmas Eve, only then, never before, never after. A woman holding a baby wrapped in a red blanket. My mother always put it there herself, gently, almost reverently, like it hurt her to look at it, but hurt even more to hide it. When I was 6, I asked who the woman was. She was someone who made very poor choices, my mother snapped, grabbing the frame too quickly, almost knocking it over. Don't ask again. And I didn't. Because I learned early that in our house, questions were landmines. The photo came back every Christmas, and every Christmas I told myself a new story about who she might be. A distant cousin. A family friend. An aunt I'd never met. But the truth was simpler and heavier than anything I could have imagined as a child. Growing up, I always got the feeling that Christmas Eve, specifically, mattered more to my parents than Christmas Day itself. We had rituals we were required to follow. The same red dresses for me. The same dinner menu. The same carols at the same time. The same candlelit prayer, one that my mother insisted we memorized word for word. It never felt festive. It felt choreographed. Like we were reenacting a tradition that didn't belong to us, but to someone they had lost. Someone they had failed. Someone they were still trying to replace. When I was 12, Christmas Eve turned frightening for the first time. We had guests over. My parents always entertained wealthy families from our community that night. Everything was polished, sparkling, perfect. Until my father's business partner, a man named Charles, drank too much wine and said, "Marie, she looks so much like her. It's almost eerie, isn't it?" The room froze. My mother's hand tightened around her champagne glass so hard I thought she'd shatter it. My father shot Charles a look that could kill. Then my mother smiled, a smile stretched so tight it barely counted as human. "We don't talk about the past, Charles." She said it sweetly. But there was venom underneath. I went to bed that night with that sentence echoing in my head. We don't talk about the past. Which only made one thing clear. The past was alive. Lurking. Breathing. Waiting. People often assume that painful families are loud, full of shouting, slamming doors, and dramatic confrontations. Mine wasn't. My family was quietly painful, suffocatingly polite, achingly controlled. There was no yelling. Just looks. Just silence. Just expectations. When I think back on those years, one memory always jumps out at me. A memory that makes sense only now as an adult. I was 15 when it happened. 2 days before Christmas Eve, I walked into the hallway and found my mother crying silently, gripping that same framed photo in her lap. I remember sitting beside her, unsure what to do. She wasn't the kind of mother who welcomed hugs. After a long moment, she whispered, "I promised her. I promised we'd protect Christmas. I promised we wouldn't repeat the same mistakes." She looked at me then, really looked at me. And the expression on her face wasn't love, wasn't fear. It was guilt. Deep, ancient guilt. Before I could ask anything, she stood, wiped her tears, and said, "Not a word about this, Evelyn. Do you understand?" I nodded. But I didn't understand. Not even close. It wasn't until I turned 19 that I realized Christmas Eve was a line dividing my parents' lives. Before whatever happened. And after. And I lived entirely in the after. I knew something had changed them forever. I just didn't know that someday. That secret. That photo. That guilt. Would walk into my own Christmas Eve wedding. And tear the entire truth out into the open. But that's getting ahead of the story. Because first, I need to tell you how I met Daniel. The man who made me believe Christmas could finally be mine. Not a performance. Not a burden. Not a symbol of someone else's mistake. Love has a way of making you blind to warning signs. Blind to patterns. Blind to history repeating itself. And without knowing it, I was walking straight into the same storm my parents had barely survived. People always ask me how I met Daniel, expecting some magical holiday story because of how everything eventually happened. The Christmas Eve wedding, the family drama, the secret that detonated at the altar. But in truth, meeting Daniel wasn't magical. It was quiet, grounded, comfortable in a way that felt suspicious to a girl raised inside a glass house full of polished smiles and hidden fractures. We met in college, in an English literature class, where half of the students were there because they thought it would be easy. It wasn't. Professor Cranston was 83 years old and had the emotional range of wet cardboard, but he pushed us relentlessly. One afternoon, after he had torn apart my essay with the passion of a man who personally hated metaphors, Daniel leaned over and whispered, "At least he didn't call yours disturbingly derivative." That honor was all mine. I laughed. Actually laughed. The kind of laugh that escapes before you can stop it. And that's how it started. Not fireworks. Not fate. Just two people bonding over being academically destroyed by a man older than the institution itself. Daniel was different. Where my family prioritized appearances, his prioritized warmth. Where my parents weaponized silence, his filled every room with loud conversations and louder laughter. Where my home was curated and immaculate, his was messy and lived in the best way possible. I didn't know families like his existed. The first time he brought me home for dinner, his mother hugged me so tightly my bones cracked, and his little brother spilled cranberry juice all over my shoes. Everyone apologized, but no one panicked. Not a single person snapped. Not a single voice sharpened. No one said, we don't talk about that, or don't ask questions, or fix yourself before people notice. I remember sitting at their dinner table. Pasta, not some perfectly roasted holiday bird with artisanal herbs. And thinking, so this is what a real family feels like. It made me dizzy with longing. Daniel fell for me before I realized I was allowed to fall for him. He used to say I always looked like I was waiting for the floor to collapse beneath me. I suppose I was. Growing up in my house meant always bracing. For a tone shift. For a secret slipping out. For the performance to crack. Daniel never accepted the mask. He wanted the real me. The messy me. The confused me. The me I had been taught to hide because people talk. He made space for me. And little by little, I stepped into it. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. And yes, he did it on Christmas Eve. The irony wasn't lost on me. He thought it was sentimental. He thought he was giving me a new Christmas memory to replace the heavy ones from my childhood. He had no idea he was stepping onto sacred ground in my family. Ground soaked with secrets. He decorated his tiny apartment with string lights that flickered like stars. There were candles everywhere, flickering against the old brick walls. And on the table sat a small velvet box, red, of course, with a silver ribbon. Evelyn, he said, taking my hands. You deserve a lifetime of peace. And joy. And holidays that don't hurt. I want to build that with you. He didn't know those words cut deeper than he realized. He didn't know that a lifetime of peace was something my mother had whispered about to a photograph when she thought I wasn't listening. He didn't know that the phrase, holidays that don't hurt, felt like an accusation. Because for my parents, Christmas always hurt. And yet, I said yes. Because with Daniel, for the first time in my life, happiness didn't feel like something I had to earn by being perfect. It felt like something I could have simply by being loved. When we told my parents, my mother froze. Not the usual tight smile she wore when she disapproved of something. Not the strained calmness she used when trying to control a situation. No, she froze. Completely. As if someone had dropped ice water down her spine. My father set down his fork so slowly it made my skin crawl. What date? He asked, voice too calm. Christmas Eve, Daniel said proudly. The wrong answer. The worst answer. My mother's face collapsed. Just for a moment. A heartbeat. But it was enough. No, she whispered. Daniel blinked. Sorry. No. Not Christmas Eve. Any other day, any day you want. But not that one. Her voice cracked on the last word. I felt the familiar terror rising in me. The terror of stepping on invisible landmines. Mom, I said softly. It's important to us. It cannot be that day, she insisted, her voice sharper now. Her breath shaky. I had never seen her rattled like that. My father spoke next, his tone low. Almost warning. Evelyn, your mother is right. Choose another date. Daniel started to speak again, but I grabbed his hand under the table. This wasn't a conversation he could win. Not yet. So we agreed to think about it. To reconsider. To talk it through. But that night, as we lay in bed, Daniel asked, why did your parents react like that? I thought Christmas Eve was special in your family. Oh, it was. Just not for the reasons he thought. I lied. I said, they get sentimental. I said, it's complicated. I said, I'll handle it. But the truth was a knot tightening in my chest. Because my parents didn't get emotional. They got scared. And that terrified me. The weeks that followed were tense. My mother tried every tactic. Bribing me with a fancy venue. Suggesting symbolic dates instead. Pretending she was worried about travel schedules. Crying, yes, actually crying, when I insisted we keep the date. You don't understand, she whispered once. Christmas Eve weddings, they don't end well, Evelyn. I wanted to scream. Why? What happened? What are you so afraid of? But I already knew the rule. We don't talk about the past. We bury it. We decorate over it. We perform around it. We do anything except look it in the eye. So I did the most rebellious thing I had ever done. I chose myself. And I kept the date. I thought winning that fight meant I had broken free from my parents' ghosts. That their secrets would stay buried. But secrets have a way of clawing their way out. Especially on Christmas Eve. especially when you're wearing a white dress and walking toward a truth that has been waiting for you your entire life. Because the moment I reached the altar, the moment I looked out into the crowd and saw a face I had never seen before but somehow recognized, I realized I hadn't escaped anything. The past wasn't done with me. Not even close. Most brides remember their wedding aisle as a blur of flowers, music, and joy. I remember mine as a tunnel. A long, shimmering, gold-lit tunnel. And at the very end of it, stood a stranger who was looking directly at me. Not smiling. Not clapping. Just watching. As if the entire ceremony existed solely for her. At first, I thought maybe she was from Daniel's extended family. He had a swarm of aunts and cousins who treated every holiday like a competitive sport. So a distant relative showing up unannounced wouldn't have been surprising. But this woman, she didn't look like someone blending in. She looked like someone waiting for something. Someone waiting for me. She wore a deep emerald coat, oddly formal for the event. And her hair, long and dark, fell over her shoulders in loose waves. But it was her eyes that struck me. They were the same color as mine. That honey brown shade that people always said looked like autumn sunlight. Only on her, they looked darker, tired, older. And when our eyes met, something inside my chest tightened. Like a muscle remembering emotion it hadn't used in years. My steps faltered. Just slightly, but enough that Daniel noticed. He squeezed my hands as I reached him at the altar, whispering, "You okay?" I nodded, but no part of me felt okay. Because as soon as I reached the altar, the woman left. She slipped out the side exit as quietly as she had appeared. And suddenly the room felt colder. Thinner. Like her presence had been holding something up. And her absence had caused it to crack. The priest began the ceremony, his voice warm and confident, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. Who is she? Why did she look at me like she knew me? Why did her leaving make something inside me ache? As the words washed over me. Love, honor, cherish. I kept scanning the room. My mother looked pale. My father looked tense. Neither of them was watching me anymore. They were watching the door. The same door the woman had just walked through. A chill moved through me. The priest invited us to exchange vows. Daniel went first. Of course he did. He spoke beautifully, as he always did. Soft promises wrapped in warmth and sincerity. Promises of shared holidays, shared laughter, shared burdens. He talked about building a family, a legacy of kindness instead of fear. I loved him. I really did. But halfway through his vow, I saw my mother's eyes fill with tears. Not happy tears. Fear tears. And she wasn't looking at Daniel. She was looking at me. Or rather, behind me. I turned my head, just slightly. The side door was cracked open. And a shadow, silhouetted by the winter light, was standing there, watching. Again. The woman had come back. But she didn't step inside. She just lingered. Just enough for me to see her. Just enough for the knot in my chest to tighten again. Just enough to make my voice tremble when it was my turn to speak. I got through half my vow before my throat closed. The priest gave me a reassuring smile. Take your time, my dear. But I wasn't overwhelmed by emotion. I was overwhelmed by recognition. Not logical recognition. No. Something deeper. Instinctual. Primal. As if my bones remembered her even when my brain couldn't. The ceremony continued. The rings. The blessing. The final prayer. But the moment the priest said, "If anyone here knows of any reason," my mother stiffened. Her hand shot out, gripping my father's arm so tightly he flinched. Daniel reached for me, squeezing my fingers gently. He thought I was nervous. But nervousness wasn't what made my ears ring. It was the quiet. The suffocating quiet. The kind of quiet that comes right before a secret breaks open. No one spoke. Not the guests. Not the mysterious woman. Not my parents. But the air? It screamed. We were pronounced husband and wife, and the room erupted in applause. I tried to smile. I tried to focus. But as soon as Daniel kissed me, I looked to the side door again. The woman was gone. And in her place stood my mother. Tears streaming down her face. Her hand pressed to her mouth. Her body shaking. Not from joy. From dread. And in that moment, a truth whispered through me. This wedding isn't the beginning of my story. It's the end of a lie. A lie I didn't know I was living. A lie my parents had built around me. A lie that woman, whoever she was here to break. Because she hadn't come to ruin my wedding. She had come to give me the truth. The truth my family had buried for over 25 years. And Christmas Eve, the date my parents begged me not to choose, was the reason why. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the woman standing outside the church. The soft blue dress, the pale gloves, the way her face softened when she looked at me like she had been waiting for me. Like she knew me. Like she knew something I didn't. And it wasn't fear that kept me awake, it was curiosity. A deep, aching curiosity that tugged at me the way a loose thread tugs at a sweater, unraveling everything you thought was tightly stitched. By morning, I was a mess of nerves, pacing the tiny living room rug thin. Nate noticed, obviously. "Ray," he said gently, tying a red ribbon on one of the Christmas wreaths he was gifting his clients. "You barely touched your breakfast." I wasn't hungry. "You're also shaking." "I'm cold." He gave me a look, the "I know you're lying but I love you" one. "Is this about last night?" he asked quietly. I froze. He didn't need to clarify. He didn't mean the shopping. He didn't mean picking up my siblings. He didn't mean the snowstorm or the stress or even the wedding nerves. He meant her. The woman by the church. "Ray, talk to me." I opened my mouth to brush it off. To say it was nothing. That I was just tired. That I probably misheard her. That she probably mistook me for someone else. But the truth pressed against my ribs like a bruise. "She knew my name," I whispered. Now he froze. The ribbon slipped from his hands. "What?" "She said my name, Nate." She didn't ask. She didn't guess. She just said it. I swallowed. "And she said she'd been trying to reach me." Nate set down the wreath. "Did she tell you how she knows you?" "No. Just that she needed a minute." Just a minute. Like something desperate. Desperate? How? I thought back. How her hands kept flexing inside her gloves. How her voice had cracked ever so slightly. How she kept looking over her shoulder like she didn't want to be seen talking to me. Like she was afraid. "I don't know," I admitted. "But she said she had something to tell me. Something important. Something about." I hesitated. "About me." Nate inhaled slowly, steadying himself. Then he walked over, placed his hands on my shoulders, and lowered his forehead gently to mine. "Ray, listen to me. Today is already going to be overwhelming enough. You don't owe this stranger anything. You don't need to think about her, talk to her, or worry about whatever she wanted to say." His voice was warm, grounding. "But I do," I said softly. "Nate," she looked at me like she knew some part of my life I've never been told. At that, a flicker, just a flicker, sparked in his eyes. Fear. Not for me. Not of me. But fear about something. Something he wasn't saying. "Nate," I whispered. "Do you know something I don't?" His jaw tightened, not in anger, but in restraint. "I know," he said carefully, "that your family loves you. And whatever she wanted to say, whoever she was, it doesn't have to define your wedding day." It wasn't an answer. It was a deflection. Before I could question him again, the front door burst open, and my mother rushed in wearing her red Christmas scarf and the same stressed smile she wore every December. "Ray, sweetheart, we're behind schedule," she announced. "Hairstylist is already waiting at the venue. The florist is calling nonstop. Your grandmother is convinced we've forgotten to arrange wheelchair access again." Then she saw my face. And froze. "Oh, honey. What happened?" I could have told her everything. But something inside me stopped. Something instinctive. Primal. Because the moment I looked into my mother's eyes, I knew. That if I mentioned the woman outside the church, my mother would lie. Not to protect me, but to protect herself. So instead I smiled. Too brightly. Nothing. Just nerves. My mother bought the lie immediately, too immediately. Of course," she said, exhaling with relief. "Wedding day jitters. Completely normal." But as she turned around to grab her coat and rush us out the door, I saw it. Her hands. Shaking. Just a little. Just enough. just like mine. By noon, I was in a bridal suite at the Maplehurst Lodge surrounded by hairspray fumes, curling irons, silk robes, and bridesmaids who were already on their second round of mimosas. Everyone was laughing. Everyone was celebrating. Everyone was excited. Except me. Because the mystery woman wasn't the only thing haunting me now. It was the way my mother had reacted. The way Nate had hesitated. The way my stomach churned every time I replayed the woman's voice in my head. Ray, I've been trying to reach you. Trying. Meaning she'd tried before. Meaning someone had kept her from me. Meaning someone had hidden her. And then the real question hit me like a punch to the lungs. Why? Why would anyone hide someone who clearly knew me? The hairstylist pulled a comb through my hair and hummed a Christmas song under her breath, unaware that my entire world was quietly, silently shifting beneath my feet. Then, a knock at the bridal suite door. 3 quick taps. Soft. Timid. Almost familiar. My mother stiffened. My bridesmaids exchanged confused looks. And something in my chest went still. The stylist lowered her curling iron. Were you expecting someone? She asked. I wasn't. Not anyone in this world. But my heart already knew. Already recognized. Already remembered. I'll get it, I whispered. My voice trembled. My mother's hand shot out fast, grabbing my wrist. Ray, wait. Too late. I opened the door. And there she was. The woman from the church. Standing in the hallway. Eyes full of something painful. Something urgent. Something meant for me and no one else. Ray, she breathed. Please. I only need 1 minute. And behind me, my mother whispered, barely audible but unmistakably terrified. No. No, she cannot talk to you. And that's when I knew. This wasn't a stranger. This was a secret. A secret someone in my family had fought hard to bury. And it had finally found me. On Christmas Eve. On my wedding day. The hallway outside the bridal suite felt colder than the rest of the lodge. Not physically. Emotionally. Like the moment I opened that door, winter itself slipped inside. The woman stood there in her pale blue coat, her gloves still on, tiny snowflakes melting into her hair. She looked as fragile as frost, and somehow twice as haunting. Behind me, the air in the room tightened. My mother was trembling. Not subtly. Not politely. But violently, like her bones themselves recognized this woman. Ray, my mother hissed under her breath. Close the door. The woman's eyes flicked to her, just for a second, and in that single moment I felt something shift. Recognition. But not kindness. Not warmth. No. This was recognition sharpened into pain. Into betrayal. Into something old and buried, rising up like a ghost who finally learned how to knock. Please, the woman whispered, turning her gaze back to me. I just need 1 minute. 1 minute and then I'll leave. I promise. 1 minute? My mother snapped. You've had 22 years of silence. You don't get a minute. 22. That number sliced through the room. 22 years. 22 years of what? My bridesmaids froze mid-sip of their mimosas. The hairstylist dropped a pin. My cousin Paige mouthed, what is happening? And I could barely breathe. Mom, I said slowly, you know her. It wasn't a question. It was a truth forming itself without permission. My mother's face drained of color. The woman in the doorway swallowed hard, her eyes glassy with a sorrow so raw it made my chest pound. I'm sorry, she said softly. I never wanted to ruin your day. I had to try. I had to see you before. Stop. My mother's voice cracked like a whip. Not today. Not here. And she lunged toward the door to slam it shut. But I stepped in front of her. For the first time in my life. Mom, I whispered. Move. Her breath hitched. She looked at me like I had stabbed her. Like choosing to hear this woman's voice was choosing betrayal. Ray, my mother said, voice breaking, she does not belong here. She is not part of. I held up a hand. No. I'm done being talked around. I'm done being protected from things I didn't even know existed. I turned to the woman. Who are you? She inhaled sharply. And whispered. Ray. I'm your aunt. My heart slammed against my ribs. Behind me, My mother choked out a quiet, devastated sound. But the woman continued. I'm your mother's sister. My mother's knees buckled. She actually stumbled, grabbing the vanity table for support. One of my bridesmaids rushed over to steady her. I stared at the stranger, the aunt feeling my pulse roar in my ears. But I don't have an aunt, I said weakly. You do, she whispered. You always did. Silence swallowed the room. The stylist froze. The bridesmaids gasped. Someone dropped their mimosa flute. My mother closed her eyes like she wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. Then the woman, my aunt, added something so quietly it barely made it past her lips. And Ray, I'm not the only thing she's hidden from you. A tremor went through my spine. What does that mean? I demanded. My mother suddenly straightened, spine rigid, voice sharp. Ray, not another word from her. Do you hear me? Not one more word. But tears were building in the woman's eyes now. Not manipulative tears. Not dramatic ones. No, these were the tears of someone who had spent years trying to break through a locked door. Ray, she whispered, I know what your family told you. I know what they didn't tell you. My throat constricted. The room felt wrong. Too loud. Too small. Tell me what? I whispered. Before she could answer, my mother stepped between us, shaking so badly she could barely stand upright. Ray, she breathed. Please. Not today. Not before your wedding. You do not need this. You do not need her. Whatever she says, whatever she claims, it is not true. The woman flinched at that. Like the lie physically hurt. Not true, she whispered. You're still doing this? Even now? Even on her wedding day? My mother clenched her fists. I did what I had to do. You stole her, the woman said. Her voice cracked open, raw. You stole her away from all of us. And now you're going to pretend. Stop. My mother's voice exploded like a gunshot. She is my daughter. Mine. And I will not let you confuse her. Not now, not ever. And suddenly everything inside me went quiet. Still. Clear. Because something in the way she said my daughter wasn't ownership. It was fear. Deep. Desperate. Paralyzing. Like she was afraid if I listened for even 1 second, I would no longer be hers. And then I understood what the knot in my stomach had been trying to whisper to me since the moment I saw this woman outside the church. This wasn't about an aunt. This wasn't about family drama. This wasn't about petty estrangement or holiday grudges. No. This was about a secret so big it could split my life into a before and after. I stepped back from my mother. And for the first time in my life, she didn't follow. She didn't grab. She didn't try to hold me. She just stood there. Small, trembling, terrified. I faced the woman. Tell me, I said, voice barely a breath. Tell me why you've been trying to reach me. She blinked fast, trying to keep tears from spilling. Then she lifted her chin. Because, Ray. Her voice wavered. You deserve to know who you really are. I felt the world tip sideways. My heartbeat turned to thunder. Behind me my mother whispered, Please, Ray, no. But I didn't look at her. Couldn't. Not anymore. Who am I? I whispered. The woman, my aunt, took a shaking breath. And finally said the first piece of the truth. You're not your mother's only lie. Her voice broke. Ray, you were never meant to grow up in this family. For a moment, no one in the room breathed. My bridesmaids stood frozen like they were watching a car crash happen in slow motion, unable to intervene, unable to look away. Snow fell softly outside the window behind us, flakes drifting past the glass like silent onlookers. My mother was shaking her head so fast her earrings rattled. Don't listen to her, Ray. You don't understand what she is. What she's done. The woman, my aunt, flinched but didn't break eye contact with me. She deserves the truth, she said quietly. She deserved it 22 years ago. My stomach twisted. 22 years. My age. Ray, my mother said again, her voice cracking, please. Don't make me relive this. I turned toward her, and the pain on her face almost made me stop. Almost. But the fear, the desperate, terrified fear, was stronger than the pain. What did you lie about? I whispered. My mother pressed her hand to her lips as if holding in a scream. The woman stepped forward one small, cautious step. I've spent years trying to reach you, she said. Letters. Emails. Certified mail. Messages left at every address your family ever lived at. But they were all intercepted. She made sure they never reached you. I blinked. My mother. I breathed. Yes. My mother let out a broken sob. You don't know what you're talking about. The woman cut her off. You had no right to erase me. My heart stumbled. Erase? Erase who? Erase what? The woman took a trembling breath. Ray, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because you deserve to know where you really come from before you stand at that altar. Something cold and electric slid down my spine. Before I stand at the altar? I echoed. Why does that matter? Silence. The kind that swells and expands until it becomes unbearable. Then, because the truth affects what you're walking into, the woman whispered. It affects who you're marrying, and why this wedding is happening today. The bridesmaids gasped. Someone murmured, "Oh my God." My mother surged forward, rage and panic finally consuming her composure. You will not drag him into this, she screamed at the woman. You will not poison her wedding. The name sat unspoken in the air, but I knew which him she meant. Michael. My groom. My sweet, steady, gentle Michael. What did he have to do with any of this? I turned sharply to my mother. Mom, what does this woman know about Michael? My mother's face blanched. That was my answer. Not words. Her silence. Her terror. Her refusal to look me in the eyes. I felt my heart stutter. Mom, I whispered, what have you been hiding from me? She shook her head. Ray, baby, please, if you love me. But the woman stepped forward again, her voice firmer now, stronger. She's afraid because she knows there's no version of this truth that makes her look good. My mother let out a strangled sound. How dare you? How dare I? The woman shot back. How dare you, Allison? How dare you take a child who wasn't yours to take? How dare you hide her entire history from her? How dare you pretend she belonged in a family she didn't come from? My breath caught. What? I whispered. What do you mean wasn't yours to take? My mother made a broken noise and reached for me, but I stepped back. Mom, I said softly. Please. Stop hiding. Just tell me. She opened her mouth. But no sound came out. And that's when the woman said it. Ray, Allison isn't your biological mother. The room spun. Someone gasped. Someone cried. I heard every reaction except my own heartbeat, which had turned into pure static. I stared at my mother, Allison, and her face crumpled into complete devastation. No, I whispered. That can't be true. That's impossible. The woman shook her head gently. She's not your mother. I am. The world tilted, blurred, collapsed. My knees nearly buckled under me. I heard my own voice, distant and trembling, say, You're my mother? She nodded slowly, tears spilling now. Yes, Ray. I gave birth to you. My lungs forgot how to work. Everything inside me screamed this couldn't be real. Couldn't be possible. Couldn't be happening on Christmas Eve on my wedding day, inside a warm lodge filled with bells and candlelight and the scent of pine and cinnamon. But her eyes were mine. The same shape, the same color, the same sadness buried under years of something heavier. I staggered backward. My mother, Allison, grabbed my arms. Ray, listen to me, please. I raised you. I protected you. What I did for a reason. But the woman, my birth mother, whispered. She stole you while I was unconscious in a hospital bed. The room erupted. The bridesmaids shouted. My cousin screamed. Someone dropped a tray of makeup brushes. But all I could hear were the words, stole you. I shook my head violently. No, that's no one steals a baby in real life. That doesn't happen. This is insane. It happened to me, the woman said, her voice breaking. It happened to us. My mother, Allison, sobbed so hard her whole body shook. That's not how it happened. That's not the truth. That's not. Then tell her the truth, the woman said quietly. Tell her why you ran. Tell her why you hid her from everyone. Tell her why you told Michael's family to never mention. My mother's face hardened in an instant, terror replaced by fury. Don't you dare say his last name. I froze. My birth mother froze. Everyone froze. Michael's last name. Why would that matter? Unless Unless this wasn't just about who I was, but about who he was. And why our families had been so willing, so eager to push this wedding forward. My mouth went dry. What does Michael's family have to do with this? I asked. Neither woman spoke. My mother covered her mouth. My birth mother whispered. Everything. Michael's name echoed in my mind like a warning bell. My mother, Allison, was covering her mouth, her eyes wide, frantic, pleading. The woman who claimed to be my birth mother was watching me with the expression of someone who had waited decades for a moment nobody should ever have to live through. And I felt like I was standing barefoot on thin ice, hearing it crack under me with every breath. What does Michael's last name have to do with this? I asked again, my voice somehow steady even though my heart wasn't. Neither mother answered. So I stepped closer. Tell me, I whispered. Tell me why my wedding day terrifies both of you. The birth mother, my mother, closed her eyes, swallowed hard, then said, because the family you're marrying into is the same family that paid to make you disappear. My breath left my body. Completely. Silently. Painfully. My knees wobbled, and my hands flew to the back of a chair to keep myself upright. What? I stammered. Allison, Mom, shook her head violently. No, that's not true. That's twisting what happened. The woman looked at her sharply. You took her because they threatened both of us if I didn't agree to. Stop, my mother shouted. Her voice cracked like glass. Then, all at once, the fight drained out of her. She seemed to collapse inward, her shoulders falling, her eyes turning glossy with the truth. Not lies. Truth. For the first time since she barged into that bridal suite, I saw it. This woman wasn't insane. She wasn't delusional. She wasn't lying. She was my mother. And Allison. Allison was terrified because the truth was finally surfacing. I took a step back from both of them. I don't understand, I whispered. Why would Michael's family, why would they pay to hide me? Pay to take me? Why? The woman's voice softened. Ray, sweetheart, you were never supposed to be raised far away. You were never supposed to be erased. The room felt suddenly too small, too hot, too bright. Then what was I supposed to be? I whispered. Both women looked at each other. Both sets of eyes filled with the same heartbreaking dread. Then my birth mother said, voice trembling. A bargaining chip. My hearing stopped. Literally stopped. I saw her mouth move, but the sound came in delayed, muffled, like I was underwater. A bargaining chip. Me. I pressed a hand to my stomach to keep from vomiting. Why? I managed. For what? The answer came not from either woman, but from behind us. A deep voice. A familiar voice. My mother lied to you, it said. To both of you. I turned around so fast my veil nearly ripped. Standing in the doorway was Michael, my groom. Tall. Handsome. Snow-dusted from outside. But his eyes were nothing like the soft, loving eyes I knew. There was guilt. Fear. Resolve. Michael, I breathed. How long have you been? Long enough, he said quietly. Long enough to realize this was going to explode today, whether we wanted it to or not. My birth mother straightened. Does your family know you're here? Michael nodded. They know. They're waiting downstairs. My skin prickled. Waiting downstairs. Like this was a planned event. A confrontation they expected. Feared. Maybe even orchestrated. I looked at him, my voice breaking. Michael, what did your family do? What does any of this have to do with me? He took a breath. A long, painful breath. And then he said, because before you were born, our families were in a legal war that nearly destroyed both sides. I blinked. A legal war? About what? He hesitated. My birth mother answered for him. Money, she whispered. Power. Inheritance. Control over companies we were both tied to back then. Michael nodded. Our families were business partners. And when things turned ugly, his jaw clenched. Your mother's pregnancy became leverage. Leverage. A bargaining chip. Me. I felt sick. But that was decades ago, I said, my voice shaking. I wasn't even born, how could any of this? Michael whispered. Because you were born into the middle of a corporate war. And both sides were terrified you'd grow up with claims, legal claims, that could dismantle everything. I stared at him. "This is insane," I said, my voice breaking. "This is insane, Michael. I don't want anything from your family. I don't want companies or money or—" "That's not the problem," he whispered. "You don't want anything. But the board does. The lawyers do. The partners do." Silence. Dead, suffocating silence. Then, my mother became convinced, Michael said slowly, painfully, that the only way to keep the peace was to keep you from knowing who you were. The breath punched out of me. "And marrying me?" I asked, voice raw. "Was that part of their peace treaty too? Tie me to you so I never realize what I'm owed." Michael closed his eyes. "Ray, my family sees our marriage as the solution. The final seal. The final bond. The world shattered. So I'm not marrying you because you love me," I whispered. "I'm marrying you because your family wants to erase me permanently." His eyes flew open. "No," he said quickly. "No, Ray, I love you. I love you more than anything in my life. I loved you long before I learned who you were." I shook my head, tears streaming down my cheeks. "Then why didn't you tell me the truth?" He stepped toward me. "I was going to. Tonight. After the ceremony. I swear it." I stumbled back. "After the ceremony," I repeated. When it was too late for me to walk away, Michael's eyes filled with anguish. "No. Ray, please. I was trying to protect you." My voice dropped to a whisper. "Everyone says that. Yet somehow, I'm the one nobody ever protects." Everyone froze. Even the air froze. Michael reached out. "Ray, please." But before he could touch me, my birth mother stepped between us. "Don't," she warned him. "Not yet." He glared at her. "You've caused enough damage today." "No," she said softly but firmly. "I'm the only one telling her the truth." He clenched his jaw. And then she said something that made everyone stop breathing. "Tell her the real reason your mother wanted this wedding rushed." Michael didn't speak. His silence was louder than screaming. My voice was barely audible. "What reason?" His eyes lifted to mine. Soft. Shattered. Full of love and guilt and something darker. Finally, he whispered. "Because if you don't marry me today, tomorrow you legally inherit everything my family has been trying to lock away from you." For a long moment, I couldn't feel my legs. I just stood there on that icy stone hallway, the muffled sound of Christmas hymns floating from the ballroom, while Michael's words kept replaying in my head like a broken record. "If we marry on Christmas Eve, I inherit everything at midnight." I swallowed hard. "Michael, are you telling me this wedding is about money?" "No," he said firmly, but his voice cracked on the edges. "No, Ray. It's not about money. It's about everything that comes with it." I stepped back. "Which is what?" He hesitated again. "Too long. Way too long." "Power," he finally whispered. "Protection. Ownership of the company before my stepmother can manipulate the board. Control over something my father built. And me," I finished, my voice thin. His face twisted with guilt. "No, Ray, not like that." "Then how?" I choked. "How am I supposed to see this?" Michael ran a hand through his hair, his breath visible in the cold air. "Look, my father's will was written in a different world. My mother was alive. Our family was intact. There were no stepmothers, no board wars, no power struggles. It was supposed to be symbolic. A tradition. A legacy. And now? Now it's a bomb tied to my future. And to me," I said again, more quietly this time. His silence said everything. I felt something crack inside me, not all the way, but enough that I felt the cold down to my bones. "Ray," Michael said, reaching for me, "if I proposed too soon, if I put pressure on you, if any part of this made you feel like a pawn, I'm sorry. I swear that wasn't my intention." "Then what was your intention?" "I didn't want to lose you," he whispered. "Not to time. Not to circumstances. Not to a legal technicality." I stared at him, my eyes stinging. "And you thought pushing a Christmas Eve wedding, before I even met your family, was the best way to prove that?" His jaw tightened. "I thought." He drew in a shaky breath. "I thought that telling you everything would terrify you. I thought you'd run. And losing you terrifies me more than losing the company." My heart twisted painfully, because I believed him. And yet, that truth still hurt. "Michael, you should have told me," I said softly. "You should have trusted me." "I know," he whispered. "I know." For a long moment, neither of us moved. The world felt suspended, one step away from everything falling apart. Then, footsteps echoed behind us. We both turned, and my stomach dropped. Because stepping toward us, graceful, composed, wrapped in a blood-red gown, was Evelyn Hawthorne, Michael's infamous stepmother. The woman whispered about in every corporate circle. The woman whose shadow haunted all of Michael's fears. The woman whose power was said to be more dangerous than her beauty. She smiled like a blade. "Ray," she purred, her voice sugary sweet poison. "I've been looking everywhere for you." Michael stiffened beside me. Evelyn continued, her eyes locking onto mine with merciless precision. "You and I," she said, "have an urgent matter to discuss." A cold wave rippled over my skin. Because something in her tone told me. She knew. She knew about the deadline. She knew about the wedding. And she knew something neither Michael nor his mother had told me yet. Something darker. Something deeper. Something that made her look at me not with disdain, but with calculation. "Come, darling," Evelyn said, turning slightly and gesturing for me to follow. "I promise, after our conversation, you may rethink marrying into this family entirely." And there it was. The next earthquake forming under my feet. Evelyn didn't walk. She glided. Her gown flowed behind her like a trail of spilled wine, and every pair of eyes in the hallway pretended not to stare, even though everyone always stared at Evelyn Hawthorne. Michael moved beside me, protective, tense. "I'm coming with her," he said quietly. Evelyn stopped without turning, her chin lifting an inch. "No," she said, her voice calm as polished ice. "This conversation is between Ray and me." My heart thudded. "I'm not going anywhere without," Michael began, but Evelyn cut him off without even facing him. "Your mother needs you, Michael." He froze. And that was powerful. The way a single, pointed sentence could stop a full-grown man like he had been yanked backward by invisible hands. Evelyn's influence wasn't about volume. It was about precision. "I just spoke to her," Evelyn added. "She's in the atrium with the minister." "She's upset." Guilt flickered over Michael's face. He looked at me, torn, apologetic. "Ray, I'll be right back." "Don't go anywhere you don't want to. You choose." It wasn't permission. It was trust. And that made me stronger. "I'll be okay," I whispered. Michael reluctantly walked away. Evelyn watched him go with an expression I couldn't read, something between amusement and victory. Only when he turned the corner did she finally look at me. "Really look at me." "Come," she said. It wasn't a request. I followed her down a side corridor, away from guests, music, warmth, into a smaller library room lit by a single fire, walls lined with old books and darker secrets. She closed the door behind us, turned, and smiled with a surgeon's precision. "You're prettier up close," she said. "I wasn't expecting that. They told me you were simple." I stiffened. "I'm not simple." She hummed thoughtfully. "No, I can see that now." She walked to the fireplace and warmed her hands, as if this were a casual chat between future in-laws. But her next words were anything but casual. "I know Michael told you about the inheritance clause." My stomach tightened. She continued. "What he didn't tell you is why his father created it." That? I hadn't realized I needed to know until she said it. But now the curiosity hit me hard. "Why?" I asked quietly. Evelyn turned, her expression sharpening. "Because he knew," she whispered. "Knew what he was leaving behind. Knew the chaos that was coming. Knew the board would try to seize control. Knew the wrong person might sit in his chair." She took a step toward me. "And he knew Michael was easily manipulated." That one stung even for me. "Michael isn't." "Oh, darling," she said with a soft, almost pitiful laugh. "He is. And not by me. By anyone who plays on his loyalty. His guilt. His desire to be the hero." She paused, studying me like she was solving a puzzle. "That's why Christmas Eve was chosen. A symbolic, emotional night. A night when people say yes to things they wouldn't normally agree to. I didn't breathe. Evelyn smiled. But that's not the real secret. She walked to a bar cart, poured herself a small glass of scotch, and then lifted it in my direction. Before Michael's father died, she said, her voice lowering, he signed a second amendment to the will. My pulse spiked. A second amendment? Oh yes. One almost no one knows about, not Michael, not his mother. Certainly not the board. She took a deliberate sip. In the event Michael marries before age 30. She paused dramatically. His spouse does not simply become a symbolic partner. My breath caught. What do you mean? Evelyn leaned in. It means you, Ray, you become the automatic controlling shareholder of the Hawthorne Corporation. I froze. Controlling. Shareholder? That can't be right. But it is. His father distrusted everyone. Everyone except, apparently, the woman his son chose. My voice went small. But he didn't even know me. No, she agreed. Which means the clause wasn't written with you in mind. She let that hang in the air. But it does apply to you. My stomach churned. So if Michael and I get married, tonight I become the most powerful person in this family. The room felt smaller. Hotter. Or maybe that was fear or confusion or disbelief. Evelyn watched me carefully, eyes glittering. Do you see now, she whispered, why I needed to speak to you alone? I did. Oh God, I did. She stepped even closer, lowering her voice to a knife's edge. Because unlike my dear stepson, I know exactly what power does to people. And I know exactly what happens when the wrong person inherits it. Her gaze locked onto mine. Now, darling. A syrup-sweet smile curved her lips. The question becomes, what are you really doing here tonight? And suddenly I wasn't sure if she was warning me. Or testing me. Or both. For a second, I couldn't speak. Evelyn's question, what are you really doing here tonight, echoed in my skull long after she stopped smiling. But before I could respond, the library door flew open. It slammed against the wall so hard the shelves rattled. Ray, Michael's mother, Grace Hawthorne, stood in the doorway, breathless, pale, eyes wide with something between terror and relief. She wasn't elegant like Evelyn. She wasn't polished or poised. Tonight, she looked like a woman whose world was cracking open. Evelyn's expression shifted from icy confidence to irritation. Grace, she said smoothly. This is a private conversa. Oh, shut up, Grace snapped. I blinked. Michael blinked from behind her. He must have come running. Evelyn's eyebrows rose. No one talked to her like that. Ever. Grace stepped inside and closed the door, her hand trembling on the knob. Ray, she said, voice breaking, I need to talk to you. Alone. Evelyn scoffed. I was already speaking with her. Grace turned on her, shaking. No. You've done enough. Too much. Something was wrong. No, something was very wrong. Michael moved in behind his mother. Mom? What's going on? Why are you? Grace lifted a hand to silence him, a gesture so unfamiliar from her gentle nature that even Evelyn blinked. Michael, she whispered, please. Give me a moment with her. Michael hesitated. Mom, if this is about the inheritance. No, she said quietly. This is about the truth. That word again. The truth. I swallowed hard. Okay, I said softly. I'll listen. Michael searched my face. Are you sure? Yes. He nodded, kissed my forehead, and whispered. I'll be right outside. Shout once and I'm in here. Then he left, closing the door behind him. Silence. Grace sank into the armchair by the fire like her knees couldn't hold her weight any longer. Evelyn didn't sit. She leaned against the bar cart, arms folded, watching with cat-like curiosity. Grace looked at me, and I realized she'd been crying. Ray, she whispered. I know what Evelyn told you. My chest tightened. And, it's true, she continued. But it's not the whole truth. I braced myself. Grace inhaled shakily. Michael's father didn't choose that clause because he believed in love. Her lips trembled. He did it because he knew someone in the family would try to steal the company after his death. Her eyes flicked briefly, very briefly, toward Evelyn. Evelyn smiled faintly, like this was all some amusing bedtime story. Grace continued. But he also added that Second Amendment, the one Evelyn mentioned, for a reason. Her voice dropped to a whisper. He wrote it for you. My heart stopped. What? But he never met me. Grace shook her head, tears spilling. Honey, he did. What? I froze. Every cell in my body went still. Grace's hands twisted in her lap. 2 years ago, she said quietly, before he died, he saw you. I felt dizzy. Saw me? Where? How? Why? Her voice cracked. It was Christmas Eve. My breath caught in my throat. Christmas. The night everything in this story was supposed to hinge on. Grace swallowed. He saw you outside the hospital. You were sitting on a bench in the snow, crying. My knees buckled and I sat without meaning to. How would he know it was me? Grace's voice softened, almost broke. Because he asked your name. My pulse thundered. He told me later that night, she whispered, that he had met a girl, you, who looked like she had the whole world on her shoulders, but still thanked the nurse who brought her a blanket. A memory stabbed through me. A nurse. A blanket. A man in a wheelchair passing by. I had thought he was just waiting for someone. Grace continued. He came home that night and said, if Michael ever finds that girl, he'll be okay. She'll keep him grounded. She'll keep him honest. She'll keep him human. My eyes burned. Grace whispered. He wrote the amendment the next morning. Evelyn finally straightened, stiffening. That was the first time she didn't look amused. She looked angry. He saw something in you, Grace said, wiping tears, something good. Something real. And he wanted to protect it. I could barely breathe. But that's not all, Grace said, voice trembling again. I braced myself. He didn't just leave you power if you married Michael. She leaned toward me. He left you something else. Something only I know about. My voice was barely a whisper. What? Grace's lips quivered. A letter. A letter. For you, she said. Only for you. Sealed. With your name on it. A chill ran down my spine. Why didn't you tell me? Because, Grace cried, he made me promise to give it to you tonight, and only tonight, after a certain moment. What moment? I whispered. She swallowed. The moment you learn the truth about your family. I froze. My family? What truth? I breathed. Grace sobbed. Ray, sweetheart. She reached for my hands. I'm so sorry. Evelyn's joy tightened barely, but enough to notice. Grace whispered the words that changed everything. Your biological mother isn't who you think she is. My stomach twisted. What are you talking about? Grace inhaled sharply, as if ripping a bandage off her soul. Ray, your birth mother. The door burst open. Michael stood there, panicked. Mom? The lights in the ballroom just went out. Half the guests are coming this way. Something's happening. And before Grace could speak the final sentence, a scream echoed down the hallway. Someone yelled, "Call security." Another shout. Someone collapsed. Chaos erupted outside. Grace gasped and clutched her chest. Evelyn cursed under her breath. Michael grabbed my arm. Ray, stay with me. The truth about my family. The letter. My birth mother. Everything. Vanished under the weight of sudden panic. The wedding was falling apart. And whatever secret Grace was about to reveal would have to wait. The scream outside the library was sharp enough to slice straight through every unfinished sentence, every secret half-spoken. Michael grabbed my hand. Grace stood trembling. Evelyn muttered something under her breath, something that didn't sound like concern at all. Another shout echoed. Someone get a doctor. Then, the bride, the bride. My blood iced. Michael didn't hesitate. He burst into the hallway, pulling me with him. Guests were scattered, panicked, phones out, heels clicking against marble as people rushed toward the ballroom. Grace tried to follow, but Evelyn blocked her gently. Grace, she said tightly, you're shaking. Sit down. But Grace shoved past her. No. I need to see. We all pushed through the crowd together. The ballroom lights were flickering, half the chandeliers glowing, half dim. Guests whispered frantically, forming a circle around something or someone on the floor. Michael squeezed my hand and whispered, "Stay close to me." My heart was pounding like it was trying to escape my chest. And then I saw her. The bride. Not me. Not Evelyn. Michael's cousin, Caroline, the one who had been glowing all night, floating on champagne and Christmas magic, the one with the kindness Evelyn lacked, was lying on the polished floor, unmoving. Her fiancé, Ethan, was kneeling beside her, shaking. "Caroline? Baby, wake up. Please." Her mother sobbed. A bridesmaid fainted. Someone was yelling for paramedics. And then, Michael froze. His grip on my hand tightened. I looked up at him and realized the color had drained from his face completely. "Michael," I whispered. "What is it?" He didn't blink. He didn't breathe. His eyes were fixed, not on Caroline, but on the small velvet box that had fallen from her bouquet onto the floor. A ring box. Silver. Antique. Engraved. I had seen that design before. In pictures. In the Hawthorne archives. In the story Evelyn told me. The Christmas heirloom, I murmured aloud before I could stop myself. Michael's head snapped toward me. "You know about that?" Evelyn mentioned. He cut me off with a sharp whisper. "Ray, that ring wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this wedding." Evelyn stepped forward, voice taut. "It wasn't. I locked it in the mansion vault myself." But Michael wasn't looking at her anymore. He was looking at the ring box as if it were radioactive. "Ray," he said quietly, urgently, "something's wrong." Before I could ask what he meant, Grace stumbled forward, pale as paper. No, not pale. Gray. Her lips were losing color. Her hands were trembling violently. "Mom?" Michael rushed to her. "Mom, what's happening?" Grace opened her mouth, but no words came out. Only a wheezing breath. Evelyn's eyes widened, not with sympathy but fear. "Grace, sit down," she ordered. But Grace shook her head frantically. And with what little strength she had left. She looked straight at me. Not at Michael. Not at Evelyn. At me. And whispered, barely audible. Tell Ray, the truth." Then her knees buckled. Michael caught her before she hit the ground. "MOM. Somebody call EMS." "Now." Guests scattered. Someone screamed again. Chaos erupted. But all I heard was one sentence. The unfinished sentence that had been cut off by the scream. "Ray, your birth mother, isn't who you think." I knelt beside Grace, my hands shaking. "Grace? Grace, look at me." Her eyes fluttered, unfocused. She clutched my wrist weakly. "Letter," she gasped. "Vault. Evelyn." My eyes shot to Evelyn. Her face didn't move. Her jaw stayed clenched. Her expression stayed eerily calm. Too calm. Michael was calling her name, Mom. "Stay with me." But she kept her gaze on me. Her fingers dug into my wrist as she whispered the last thing she managed before the paramedics burst through the doors. "Your mother is in this room." And then she went limp. Michael screamed for the medic. Evelyn finally moved, stepping backward, her expression shattering for just one flicker of a second. And I was frozen. My birth mother is in this room. This room. Tonight. At this Christmas Eve wedding. And the only two women near me were Grace and Evelyn. One unconscious. The other unblinking. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear the sirens outside. The Christmas mystery, the one I thought was about inheritance, power, and the Hawthorne legacy, twisted sharply into something far more personal. Far more devastating. Far more dangerous. And the answer. The answer was somewhere in this room. Waiting to destroy everything I thought I knew. The paramedics pushed through the chaos like a tidal wave, red jackets, sharp commands, wheeled stretcher slicing the room in half. "Ma'am, stay back, please, give us space." Michael didn't let go of his mother's hand until they physically pulled him aside to work. His face, usually composed, calm, almost stoic, was cracked wide open with fear. "Mom? Mom, can you hear me?" No response. Grace's eyelids fluttered once, just enough to make my heart squeeze, but then they closed again, her breathing shallow and uneven. Evelyn stood several feet away. Not helping. Not comforting. Not even blinking. Just watching. And that alone told me more than words ever could. When the medics finally lifted Grace onto the stretcher, Michael grabbed his coat and turned to me, desperate. "Ray, come with me." Please. Of course. Without question. But as I stepped forward, a hand shot out and gripped my wrist. Evelyn. Her nails dug in, sharp, cold, calculated. Ray, she murmured quietly, her face stiff, your presence will only make things worse right now. Michael spun back around. What? She's coming. Don't start. But Evelyn didn't look at me. Her eyes stayed on him. Michael, she said, voice firm but soft enough to avoid attention. Your mother does not need stress. She does not need confusion. And Ray, being there, could confuse her. I felt something twist in my stomach, something dark and immediate. Why? I asked, stepping out of Evelyn's grasp. Why would I confuse her? Evelyn didn't answer. Because she couldn't, not without revealing the truth. Michael sputtered, angry and confused. She literally called out for Ray. She asked for her. Evelyn's jaw tightened. That was delirium. She didn't know what she was saying. But she did. Grace's last words before collapsing were not delirious at all. They were deliberate. Tell her the truth. Your birth mother is in this room. Letter, vault. A cold realization washed over me. I whispered it out loud before I could stop myself. She wasn't calling for help. She was calling out a secret. Evelyn stiffened. Michael turned to me sharply. What secret? My mouth felt dry. I don't know yet, I said truthfully. But she wanted me to find something in the vault, something you. I turned to Evelyn, didn't want her to tell me. For the first time all night, Evelyn's mask cracked, not much, just a flicker, but it was enough. Enough to confirm what Grace couldn't finish saying. Enough to confirm the fear rising in my chest. Enough to confirm she knew exactly what Grace was talking about. Michael's voice broke through the tension. I don't have time for this. I need to go with her. He grabbed my hand again. Ray, please, just come. Before I could answer, the medics rolled the stretcher toward the exit, shouting for space. Evelyn stepped into our path. Michael, she said, low and urgent, you need to listen to me. No, he snapped. I'm done listening to you tonight. He pushed past her. But she wasn't talking to him anymore. She turned her head and whispered to me, don't go to the vault. My heart stopped. Because the way she said it wasn't a warning. It was a threat. Michael ran with the stretcher, following the paramedics. Ray, he called back. Are you coming? Yes. Of course I should go. But Grace's voice echoed in my mind again, weak, trembling, urgent. Vault. Evelyn. Letter. Tell Ray the truth. Your mother is in this room. I glanced toward the hallway that led to the private wing of the mansion, toward the underground vault where the Hawthorne family kept their most important documents. Documents Evelyn guarded like a dragon guarding treasure. Documents Grace wanted me to see before she collapsed. Documents that contained answers Evelyn would do anything to keep buried. I swallowed hard. I'll meet you at the hospital. I called to Michael. He hesitated, torn, but then nodded and followed the paramedics out the doors. The moment he disappeared, Evelyn stepped directly in front of me, blocking the hallway, blocking the vault, blocking the truth. Her voice dropped into a tone I had never heard from her, a tone colder than the December air outside. Ray, she whispered, turn around. Go home. Forget everything you think Grace tried to say. I stared at her. You can't stop me. She tilted her head. A smile, not warm, not amused, just sharp. I already have. Then she leaned in close enough that her perfume, cold jasmine, hit the back of my throat. And she whispered the 5 words that turned my blood to ice. She's not your mother either. My heartbeat roared in my ears. What? I breathed. What did you just say? Evelyn stepped back, smoothed down her dress, and said, very calmly, you heard me. My legs went numb. Not my mother either? Not Grace. Not Evelyn. Not the woman who raised me. Then who? Who are you talking about? I demanded. Evelyn's eyes flicked briefly, just briefly, toward the ballroom. Toward the guests. Toward the crowd. Toward the people Grace said the truth was hidden among. A chill crawled down my spine. My voice cracked. Who is my mother? Evelyn's expression didn't change. But she gave one tiny, subtle nod toward the ballroom. And whispered, find her before someone else does. And then she walked away, leaving me alone in the hallway, with a vault full of secrets behind me, a ballroom full of strangers in front of me, and the terrifying knowledge that somewhere in this mansion, my real mother was standing mere feet away, and she might not want to be found. For a long moment, I just stood there in the corridor, frozen, while the world around me murmured with Christmas music, clinking glasses, and the buzzing electricity of a wedding that had just exploded. "She's not your mother either." Evelyn's voice echoed in my skull like a bell tolling through snow-covered mountains. If Grace wasn't my mother and Evelyn wasn't my mother, then someone else in this mansion was. And Evelyn knew exactly who. That was the most chilling part. She knew. She'd always known. And she was terrified of me finding out. Which meant only one thing. I had to find out now, before she could stop me again. I turned toward the hallway that led to the Hawthorne family vault. The private wing of the estate was quiet, almost too quiet, like the mansion itself had paused to listen. At the end of the hallway sat a thick wooden door with a brass lock, the entrance to the archive room, where generations of Hawthorne documents, heirlooms, and secrets were stored. I reached for the handle. Locked. Of course. But then I remembered something. Something Evelyn had done just 10 minutes earlier, when she grabbed my wrist to stop me from following Michael. Her other hand had been shaking, trembling, and her bracelet, a thick gold band, had slipped slightly, revealing a small, old-fashioned key clipped behind it, hidden from sight. She must have forgotten to resecure it in the chaos. My stomach dropped. Without thinking, I reached into the pocket of my dress. And there it was. A cold, tiny weight against my fingers. The key. She must have dropped it when she grabbed me. Thank God. Thank fate. Thank Grace. I shoved the key into the lock. It clicked. I pushed the heavy door open. Inside, the vault wasn't what I expected. Not metal. Not concrete. But a library. Warm. Carpeted. Softly lit with golden sconces. Shelves overflowing with leather-bound ledgers, framed family trees, dusty photo albums, marriage certificates, deeds, wills. A place built not for money, but for lineage. I scanned the shelves searching for. I didn't even know what. Then I saw a cabinet labeled, "Personal Records, Children." My heart thudded once, hard. The glass door creaked as I opened it. Inside were dozens of white document boxes, perfectly alphabetized by name. Adrian, Amelia, Benjamin, Catherine, Charlotte. My eyes moved downward. Ray Hawthorne. My breath hitched in my chest. There it was. A simple white archival box. My name. My handwriting? No. Grace's handwriting. I pulled the box down and set it on the long oak table in the center of the vault. My fingers trembled as I lifted the lid. Inside were 3 things. A birth certificate. A sealed envelope labeled "The Truth for When She's Ready." A photograph. I grabbed the photograph first. And my heart stopped. It wasn't Grace holding a baby. It wasn't Evelyn. It wasn't anyone I recognized. The woman in the picture was young, maybe 21, with long dark hair and eyes that looked exactly like mine. Exactly. Her smile was nervous, almost fearful, but full of love as she held a newborn wrapped in a hospital blanket. On the back of the photo, written in smudged ink, "Ray, my Christmas miracle." L. My throat closed. My pulse roared. L. Who the hell was L? My birth certificate slid half out of the box, catching my eye. I picked it up. It was real. Stamped. Signed. And it said, Mother, Lucia Bennett. Father, unknown. Child, Rachel Ray Bennett. Hospital, St. Margaret's, December 24th. My vision blurred. My name wasn't Ray Hawthorne. I wasn't born into this family. I wasn't Grace's daughter. I wasn't a Hawthorne by blood at all. I had no idea who my father was. But I did know something now. My mother's name was Lucia Bennett. And she had been here. Tonight. Somewhere among the guests. Grace hadn't lied. She meant every word. Your birth mother is in this room. My hands shook as I reached for the sealed envelope. The truth for when she's ready. I tore it open. Inside was a letter, shaky handwriting, clearly written while Grace was already ill. And as I read the first line, my knees nearly collapsed under me. Ray, if you are reading this, then it means I have failed to tell you myself. I swallowed hard. I have loved you like my own daughter from the moment Lucia placed you in my arms, begging me to keep you safe. My breath left my body in a single broken exhale. Your mother never abandoned you by choice. She was threatened. She was forced out. And she was forbidden to contact you. My chest tightened. Forbidden? By who? I kept reading. There was someone powerful who didn't want you two together. Someone who believed Lucia was not fit to raise you. Someone who thought they were protecting the family name. The room began to spin. Because I knew who she meant. I knew. My eyes jumped to the next line. Evelyn Hawthorne is the reason Lucia had to leave. A shockwave ripped through me. I gripped the table to stay upright. Grace continued. She lied to everyone. She lied to Michael. She lied to me. She lied to you. She arranged everything. Tears blurred the ink. She told Lucia she could either leave quietly or lose her child forever. Lucia chose the only option that let you live. I covered my mouth with my hand. Grace's words blurred and swam. I tried to protect you. I tried to bring Lucia back into your life. But Evelyn controls more than the family believes. And she warned me to stay quiet. My heartbeat thudded like thunder. Then came the final lines, jagged, shaky, desperate. Lucia is here tonight. She came for you. Find her before Evelyn does. The letters slipped from my hands. Lucia, my mother, was here. Not metaphorically. Not symbolically. She was physically inside this mansion. At my wedding. Looking for me. And Evelyn knew it. I turned toward the door. Just as I heard footsteps outside. Slow. Deliberate. Coming straight toward the archive room. I grabbed the box, the photo, the letter. Footsteps stopped right outside the door. A shadow slipped under the crack. Then, the doorknob turned. The doorknob turned so slowly it was almost silent, but in the quiet of the archive room, it sounded like a gun cocking. I froze where I stood, clutching the photo of Lucia so tightly the edges bent. The door opened, only an inch at first, and then wider. I braced myself for Evelyn's silhouette. For the poised cruelty. For the cold smile she wore when she knew she had someone trapped. But it wasn't Evelyn. A woman stepped inside quietly, as if afraid to disturb the air. She was wrapped in a long winter coat, snowflakes melting in her dark hair. Her eyes, deep brown, soft, startled, locked onto mine. And my breath simply left me. Because they were my eyes. She didn't speak at first. She just stared at me like she'd seen a ghost. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said my name. Ray. I felt my legs give out, and I had to grip the table to keep myself standing. My heart thrashed inside my chest. She stepped farther in, closing the door behind her carefully, almost protectively. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't want you to find out like this. Not tonight. Not on your wedding day. My throat tightened so hard I couldn't speak. I could barely breathe. I managed to shake you're Lucia? She nodded, tears filling her eyes so fast they shimmered before they fell. Yes, I'm your mother. Everything inside me cracked relief, anger, heartbreak, longing colliding so violently I thought I might collapse right there on the cold archive floor. I took a step toward her without meaning to. Why did you leave me? My voice broke on the last word. Why did you let her take me? She shook her head fiercely. I didn't let her. Ray, I fought. I fought so hard. I almost died trying to keep you. Her voice splintered. But I was alone. I had no money, no power, no family. Evelyn. She threatened to destroy my life completely. She said if I didn't leave, she'd make sure I never saw you again and that you'd grow up believing I abandoned you. Anger flared through me, hot, sharp, uncontained. She did that anyway, I said. She made Grace protect her lies. She made Michael believe I was his perfect, legitimate daughter. The faintest sound echoed outside the door. Lucia froze. I froze. The soft drag of expensive heels across the marble hallway. Lucia whispered. She followed me. Another step. A shadow under the door. Lucia grabbed my hand, her grip trembling. Listen to me. I came here tonight because Grace told me she didn't have much time left. She wanted you to know the truth. She wanted you to know you were loved twice, by her and by me. The shadow paused. Right outside. I could hear breathing now, controlled, practiced, the way someone breathes when they're preparing to perform. Lucia's voice dropped to a whisper so thin it barely existed. But there's something else you need to know. Something Grace couldn't write in the letter. The doorknob rattled sharply. We both jumped. Lucia tightened her grip on my hand. Ray, Evelyn didn't do all of this alone. My stomach twisted. What? There was someone else who wanted you gone even more than she did. The doorknob turned. Lucia's eyes widened with fear, not for herself. For me. Ray, she whispered, the person who wanted me out of your life wasn't Evelyn. The door swung open, and the person standing there made my entire world tilt sideways. Because it wasn't Evelyn. It was someone I trusted. Someone who had smiled at me my entire life. Someone who had just watched me say my vows. Someone who should never have been there. Everything inside me froze as our eyes met, and Lucia's voice trembled beside me. It was him. The air in the archive room went silent, heavy, suffocating, almost electric. Lucia's hand tightened around mine, but I couldn't feel it. I couldn't feel anything. My pulse thudded in my ears, drowning out every sound but the echo of my own heartbeat. Because the person standing in the doorway was my father, Michael, still wearing his wedding tuxedo, still holding the same calm expression he'd worn when he walked me down the aisle just hours earlier. But now there was something else in his eyes. A shadow. Something cold and deeply familiar, yet something I'd never allowed myself to see. Dad, I whispered, though my voice barely worked. What are you doing here? He stepped inside and closed the door behind him with an unsettling gentleness, as if he were closing a nursery door. Ray, he said softly. Honey, why don't we all take a breath? Lucia stiffened beside me. Don't go near her. Michael turned his eyes to her slowly, deliberately. No shock. No confusion. No recognition that he was seeing a woman believed dead or gone. Just annoyance. Like she was an inconvenience that had wandered back into the house. I see Grace finally started talking before the end, he said flatly. Unfortunate. I was hoping she'd stay loyal. My lungs stopped working. I stared at him. You knew. He tilted his head slightly, as though weighing how much of the truth I deserved. I knew everything, he said. From the beginning. Lucia let out a shaking breath. Ray, he's the one who had me removed. Not Evelyn. Michael gave a dismissive laugh. Removed. Please. You make it sound so dramatic. You were unstable. Desperate. Threatening to take Ray away from us. I did what any father would do. You're not her father, Lucia snapped. Michael's expression didn't change. Not one muscle. Inside my chest, something twisted violently. Dad, my voice cracked. Tell me she's lying. Tell me you didn't. Didn't what? He cut in calmly. Didn't protect you? Didn't save you from a life with a woman who couldn't even support herself? Lucia flinched. My stomach dropped. Michael stepped closer, and every inch he moved felt like a betrayal I hadn't yet unpacked. You were mine the moment I held you, he said, voice low. Mine to raise. Mine to shape. Mine to give the life you deserved. And I wasn't about to let he glanced at Lucia, poor girl with a tragic story, ruin that. Lucia lunged forward, but I held her back. My voice shook. Why didn't you tell me? Because you didn't need to know, he snapped, finally losing the polished veneer. You had a good life. A better one than she ever could have given you. And now you're married into the Whitaker family. I've secured everything for you. There it was. Not love. Not protection. Control. My knees trembled, but I forced myself to stand straighter. Dad, the letter, the documents. Grace said. Grace was always too emotional, he interrupted with a sigh. I should have sent her away years ago. But she adored you. And you adored her. Removing her would have caused unnecessary suspicion. My heart shattered. He wasn't even hiding it anymore. Lucia stepped forward, voice shaking but fierce. You separated a mother from her child. Michael shrugged. And look how she turned out. Educated. Stable. Successful. Engaged to, he paused, correcting himself with clinical precision. Married to a wealthy family. You should be thanking me. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but they weren't heartbreak. They were rage. Ray, Lucia whispered, gripping my arm, we have to leave. Now. Before he. Michael's hand shot out faster than either of us expected. He grabbed my wrist. Ray, he said, his voice suddenly cold enough to burn. You're going to walk back upstairs, smile, and finish your reception. This little detour ends now. Do you understand? A chill ran through my entire body. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't looking at my father. I was looking at the man who stole my entire childhood. And wanted the rest of my life too. Lucia pulled on me, but Michael tightened his grip. And then, a voice echoed from the hallway. A voice I wasn't expecting. A voice that hit Michael like a slap. Let her go. Michael froze. My heart leapt into my throat. Because standing there, breathless and furious, was the last person I ever thought would defy him. My husband. The room vibrated with a tension that felt almost physical, like the air could snap in half if anyone breathed too loudly. My father's face had gone from pale to a deep, furious red, like a kettle whistling right before it explodes. Daniel stood beside me, jaw tight, shoulders squared, not raising his voice, but radiating a calm, controlled fury that was somehow more terrifying than any shouting could ever be. My mother hovered near the doorway, wringing her hands as if she wanted to run and stay at the same time. Lucia stood frozen, as if she had been carved out of ice. And me, my heart hammered so hard I could hear the pulse in my ears. My father looked at Daniel with the kind of disdain he usually reserved only for people he believed were beneath him, which, in his mind, was almost everyone. You think you know something about this family, my father growled, his voice low, dangerous. You don't know anything. You're young. You're naive. And you're already stepping out of line. Daniel didn't flinch. Not even a millimeter. I know enough, he said calmly. I know your daughter has spent her entire life afraid of you. I know she's finding out tonight that you built her childhood on lies. And I know that I'm not going to let you intimidate her anymore. My father took one step forward. Daniel did not move. It was the first time I had ever seen someone stand up to him like that, without trembling, without trying to placate him, without shrinking. It did something to me. It rearranged something inside my chest. My father's eyes narrowed. This is a family matter. Not yours. Daniel shook his head slowly. She is my wife. If it affects her, it affects me. My father's lips curled. She married into our family. You married into mine. Watch how you speak to. No. That word didn't come from Daniel. It came from me. Everyone turned. My voice wasn't loud, but it was steady, steadier than I felt, steadier than I had ever heard myself sound. No, I repeated. He didn't marry into your family. He married me. And I'm not your possession to hand off or control. I never was. My father blinked, caught off guard. He wasn't used to being interrupted, much less corrected. And definitely not by me. Ray, he said slowly, you're upset. You're overwhelmed. I understand. But you need to calm down and let me explain. Then explain, Daniel cut in. Explain why you kept her mother away from her. Explain why you forged signatures. Explain why you moved across the country like a criminal trying to disappear. Explain why you threatened to sue a woman who was trying to see her own child. My father's mouth twitched. A tiny, dangerous glitch in his mask of control. I did what was necessary, he said. Lucia was unstable. She was unpredictable. She wasn't fit to raise a child. She wasn't unfit, Lucia rasped, finally speaking, her voice trembling but clear. I was poor. That's all. But poverty isn't unfit. Losing a job isn't unfit. Struggling isn't unfit. What was unfit was you deciding you owned Ray more than I did. My father's jaw clenched. I had to protect her. From who? I asked. From my own mother? From me, was what I didn't ask out loud. But we all heard it anyway. For a second, just a fraction of a second, I saw something flicker across his face. Something almost like panic. But it vanished under a wave of anger. You're my daughter, he snapped. I did everything for you. I gave you a home, a future, a name. I kept you safe. You kept me obedient, I said quietly. There's a difference. Daniel's hand brushed mine, not grabbing, not guiding, just grounding me, reminding me I wasn't alone. My father's nostrils flared. This is ridiculous. This woman, he pointed at Lucia, signed her rights away. Lucia's chin trembled, but she didn't look away. In a hospital hallway, she said. At 2 in the morning. With a nurse watching and you telling me it was temporary. You said you were helping me. You said I could take her back when I was stable again. Her voice cracked. But you knew exactly what you were doing. My mother closed her eyes like the words physically hurt her. I never agreed to any of this, she whispered. I told you we should help her, not take her daughter. But you. Enough, my father barked. This conversation ends now. No, I said again. My voice didn't shake. It doesn't. He stared at me like I had spoken in another language. I'm getting married tomorrow, I whispered. And you were almost my walk down the aisle. You were almost the one standing beside me. But now I don't even know who you are. I'm your father, he snapped. You're the man who raised me, I corrected. But that doesn't mean you're the man I thought you were. Daniel stepped slightly in front of me then, not shielding me, but standing with me. And for the first time in my entire life, my father didn't have a comeback. He didn't have the next move. He didn't have control. He just stood there, chest heaving, eyes burning with a fury that came from losing something he believed could never slip from his grip. Lucia took one small step toward me. I never stopped loving you, she whispered. Not one day. The room felt like it was collapsing and expanding at the same time. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. Then, my father lunged. Not at me. Not at Daniel. At Lucia. And everything exploded at once. I didn't even have time to process what was happening. 1 second my father was standing across the room, chest heaving like a bull ready to charge. The next, he moved. Fast. Violent. Unthinking. Straight toward Lucia. Her eyes widened. My mother gasped. Daniel reacted before my brain even caught up. He stepped between them just as my father reached her. There was a sound. Not loud, but sickening. The thud of impact, flesh against solid muscle. My father grabbed Daniel's jacket with one hand, shoving him backward, trying to get him out of the way. But Daniel didn't budge. He held his ground like a wall that refused to fall. Don't you touch her, Daniel said, voice low, steady, lethal. My father was breathing like he'd run a marathon, eyes wild in a way I'd never seen, not even in my worst childhood memories. She is ruining everything, he snarled. She doesn't have the right to be here. She doesn't get to walk in after all these years and twist my daughter against me. She didn't twist anything, Daniel said. You did. My father shoved him again, harder, but Daniel didn't move an inch. I finally found my voice. Dad, stop. He froze at the sound of my voice, only for a heartbeat, but enough that Daniel took the chance to push him back a step. My mother rushed to Lucia's side, shielding her with her arms as if she could somehow protect her from the decades of damage already done. Lucia wasn't crying. She didn't shrink. She didn't cower. She just stared at my father with a strange mixture of heartbreak and pity. You haven't changed, she whispered. Not at all. That broke something in him. Because for the first time that night, he looked almost afraid. You think you can take her from me? He snapped. After everything I did? After everything I sacrificed? She is my daughter. Mine. No, I said quietly. I'm not. The whole room went silent. My father turned to me slowly, too slowly, like he already knew he wasn't going to like what came next. I'm not yours, I repeated. Not in the way you think. Not in the way you forced me to be my entire life. Ray, he said, reaching out as if the word alone could reel me back into place. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. My hands were shaking, but my voice wasn't. You controlled my childhood. You controlled every decision I made. You controlled my mother. You controlled my choices. You even tried to control Daniel. He flinched at that. And the worst part? I continued. I let you. Because I was afraid of losing you. Daniel's hand subtly brushed mine again, grounding me, reminding me that I wasn't that little girl anymore. But now, I whispered, I finally know the truth. And you don't get to rewrite it anymore. He looked around the room as if searching for someone, anyone, to back him up. My mother wouldn't meet his eyes. Lucia stood fragile but unbroken. Daniel was an immovable force between us. And him? He was alone. Really alone. "You don't mean that," he said quietly. His voice cracked, and that, more than the shouting, was what shook me. "I raised you. I gave you everything. I kept you safe. I protected you from a life you shouldn't have had to live." "Did you protect me?" I asked softly, "or did you protect yourself?" His eyes flashed. Because he knew the answer. He had always known. "I'm done," I whispered. "I'm done choosing fear over truth. I'm done living the version of life you drew for me." For a moment, just a moment, he looked small. Then something snapped behind his eyes. "You'll regret this," he said. "Both of you." Daniel stepped forward before I could. "Don't threaten her." "I'm warning her," my father said. "No," Daniel said. "You're losing her. And you can't stand it." My father pointed a trembling finger at him. "You destroyed this family." Daniel shook his head. "You did that the moment you decided you owned your daughter instead of raising her." The silence after that was suffocating. My father's shoulders rose and fell in jagged breaths. His face twisted. He looked like a man watching a lifetime of control crumble into dust. "Get out," he finally said. "All of you." He stormed out of the room, slamming the door so hard a picture frame rattled on the wall. The echo of it vibrated through my bones. But for the first time, the sound didn't scare me. My mother sat down hard, covering her mouth with shaking hands. Lucia sank onto the edge of the couch as if her knees had given out. Daniel turned to me. "Are you okay?" It was the gentlest question in the world. And somehow the thing that made my legs finally give out. He caught me before I fell. "I'm okay," I whispered, even though I wasn't. I was shaking. I was exhausted. I was terrified. But I was free. The church glowed like something out of a winter fairy tale. White poinsettias lined the aisle, candles flickered along every pew, and soft snow drifted past the stained glass windows like the sky itself was blessing the ceremony. The choir hummed low Christmas harmonies while guests whispered about how perfect everything looked. Perfect. Funny word for a day built entirely on a secret. My hands were steady as I held my bouquet for branches, red berries, and white roses, but inside, my chest felt like a hollow cathedral. Matthew stood at the altar already, looking heartbreakingly handsome, the warm yellow glow of the sanctuary lights softening every line of worry on his face. He didn't know, not really. Not the whole truth. Not why I'd been so quiet all week. Not what was waiting to break us open the moment those doors closed behind me. My father, or the man I thought was my father, slipped his arm through mine. His scent, cologne and peppermint, used to comfort me. Today it made my throat tighten. He kissed my forehead, proud, emotional, completely unaware that everything he'd tried to hide for 24 years was about to detonate in front of 300 people. The music changed. The doors opened. Everyone rose. And for a moment, despite the storm building in my chest, I felt that swell of magic they say brides feel. The hush, the collective breath, the glow of Christmas, the quiet reverence of love. But then I saw her, my mother, standing in the back pew. The mother who wasn't supposed to be here. The mother I was told had died when I was 8. And she wasn't alone. My Aunt Lila, the woman who had raised me, the woman I trusted more than anyone, was standing beside her, white-faced, trembling, eyes full of a guilt so heavy she could barely keep her head up. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Is that?" "But she's supposed to be dead." Matthew's eyes widened, his lips parting in confused shock as he looked from my mother to me, like asking silently, "What is happening?" My legs faltered. My bouquet slipped in my hands. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My mother, alive, stepped into the aisle. Tears streamed down her face. And then she said the words that shattered every Christmas, every memory, every truth I had ever known. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I never left you. They took you from me." The room erupted. My father went rigid beside me, his grip tightening painfully on my arm as though he could stop the truth by holding me still. The choir stopped singing. Someone cried out. Several guests stood, stunned. I took a step backward, away from the man who raised me, away from the aisle that suddenly felt like a tunnel closing in. Is it true? My voice broke, fragile, small. You told me she died. You made me believe she died. His face collapsed into something ugly: fear, anger, desperation, all tangled together. I did what I had to do, he hissed under his breath. She was unfit. You were better off. My mother's voice tore through his lie. You stole her, she sobbed. You stole my daughter because I left you. Because I was leaving the marriage and you couldn't stand to lose control. Gasps filled the church like a wave. My father tried to shush her, to quiet the truth, but the silence could no longer be controlled, not after 24 years of suffocating underneath it. Every eye in the room was on us. On me. The bride whose family just exploded at the altar. Matthew left his place at the front and walked straight down the aisle, ignoring the priest, ignoring the stunned guests. He came to my side, gently prying me out of my father's grasp. You don't have to do this alone, he whispered. But the truth is, I wasn't sure I could do it at all. The world pitched and swayed under my feet as I looked at the man who raised me, the man who lied to me, the man who made me mourn a mother who was alive, standing right in front of me with her heart bleeding out of her eyes. How could you? I choked. How could you let me cry for her every Christmas? How could you let me visit an empty grave? He opened his mouth, but for once, he had no lies left. My mother stepped forward slowly, carefully, like approaching a wild animal who might bolt at any second. Baby, I fought for you, she whispered. I fought for years. Court after court. Hearing after hearing. They took everything from me. And when I got close, he moved you. Changed schools. Changed addresses. Changed everything. Tears blurred my vision. My life. My childhood. My memories. All rewritten. All stolen. This is your day, Matthew said softly, voice trembling. And you deserve the truth before you say a single vow. The truth. The truth that should have come years ago. The truth that arrived in a Christmas church with candles crackling and snow falling outside like some cruel miracle. I looked at my mother, the woman who had fought for me, who had been erased from my life. I looked at my father, the man who had twisted the story until even I believed it. And as the Christmas bells rang outside the church, I felt something inside me finally snap free. My wedding can wait, I said, loud enough for every guest to hear. But the truth can't. And with 300 people watching, I walked toward the mother I thought I'd lost forever. The moment I stepped toward my mother, something shifted in the room. The tension didn't break, it transformed. 300 people leaned forward, breath held, as if seeing a ghost reunion wrapped in Christmas lights. Her hands trembled as she reached for me, terrified I'd pull away. I didn't. The second her fingers brushed mine, 24 years of missing memories rushed in, the lullabies I never heard, the school plays she never saw, the tears she shed that I never knew existed. She pulled me to her chest and sobbed softly into my hair. My baby, my Christmas miracle. I never stopped fighting for you. I closed my eyes, something deep and frozen inside me cracking open for the first time. Behind us, my father muttered my name, but Matthew stepped between us, calm but firm. Not today, he said. Not anymore. My father's mask finally slipped, desperation clinging to him like sweat. She's lying, he stammered. She abandoned you. I protected you. My mother's tears dried instantly, replaced by quiet fury. I left him, not you, she said. And he couldn't stand losing control. So he told the courts I was unstable. He hid you. He changed schools, changed states, changed everything until the system lost track of us both. The crowd murmured, whispers turning into ripples of shock. I looked at my father, a man whose authority had shaped my entire life, and for the first time, I wasn't afraid of him. You didn't protect me, I said. You protected yourself. His jaw tightened, and for a moment I saw it, the truth he'd spent half his life burying. I was afraid, he admitted hoarsely. Afraid she'd take you away. Afraid you'd choose her. And you were right, I said softly. He flinched like I'd struck him. But there was no cruelty in my voice, just clarity. The choir director stepped forward awkwardly. Should we postpone the ceremony? All eyes turned to Matthew. He reached for my hand, warm, steady, anchoring, and looked at me like I mattered more than the chaos around us. "This is your choice," he whispered. "Your moment. Your truth. Your life. Whatever you want to do, I'm with you." The room blurred. The lights. The winter air. The silent Christmas bells. And then everything inside me settled into place. "I want to finish this," I said, turning toward the altar. "But not the way we planned." The priest blinked. "What do you mean, dear?" I looked at the guests, the community I was supposed to be celebrating with, and then at my mother, who was still crying quietly, hands pressed to her lips. "My entire life was built on a lie," I said. "A lie told to protect someone who didn't deserve protecting. And I won't start my marriage by pretending everything is perfect." I took Matthew's hand. "But I do choose love. Real love. Honest love. And I choose to start my marriage with the truth, not just about today, but about the family I'm reconciling with." The priest nodded gently. "Then we begin when you're ready." "I'm ready," I said. But before walking up the aisle, I turned toward my mother. "Would you sit in the front row? With Matthew's family?" Her knees nearly buckled. "Of course," she whispered. "Of course, sweetheart." She took her seat, trembling, radiant, alive, and for the first time in my life I saw what Christmas was supposed to look like. Not perfect, not polished, not a performance, but real, flawed love finally coming to light. I walked toward the altar. My father stayed frozen where he stood, out of excuses, out of power, out of places to hide. He didn't follow. He didn't dare. The ceremony resumed. Matthew smiled through tears when he said his vows. "I don't want perfect," he whispered. "I just want you honest, brave, fierce you." My own vows came easily, like they had been waiting for this moment of truth to finally take shape. When Matthew kissed me, the church erupted into applause, not polite, not formal, but loud and emotional and cathartic. Even the priest laughed, clapping right along with everyone else. But the moment that made me break? When my mother stood before me at the reception, hands shaking as she touched my veil. "I lost every Christmas with you," she said. "But if you let me, I'll spend the rest of my life making new ones." I hugged her, really hugged her, and this time, it wasn't grief. It wasn't pain. It wasn't longing. It was peace. The kind you only get when the truth finally comes home. And that Christmas night, with snow falling softly outside the windows and laughter echoing through the hall, I realized something beautiful. My father stole my history, but I reclaimed my future. And I reclaimed it in front of everyone at the altar, under the lights, with the man I love and the mother I got back. Sometimes the biggest miracle isn't found under the tree. Sometimes it walks into your wedding wearing 24 years of lost time and calls you baby again. If this story moved you even a little, if you believe love deserves truth, if you believe family secrets always find their way to the light, tell me in the comments, what would you have done if a hidden parent showed up at your wedding? Like this story. Subscribe to Bridal Confessions for more emotional twists, shocking family revelations, and endings that hit straight in the heart. Your support helps us bring more stories like this to life every single day. Ready for the next one?